I've got a plugin I'm about to show you that I'm actually pretty excited about. Imagine all the fun features of Soothe. Okay, maybe not all the features, but geared towards vocals. And it's at a much more competitive price point. This plugin is by Waves, and it's called Silk Vocal. You can think of this as a resonance suppressor, okay, similar to Soothe or similar to Mastering the Mix Rezo, but like I said, it's geared toward vocals. Now, if you were so lucky to be a subscriber of my YouTube channel, you would have seen the video where I showed you how to get this plugin for free for Black Friday. So if that's not a good reason to be a subscriber, I don't know what is. And regardless of how you got this plugin, I'm gonna break all the features down and show you how to use this in two different songs. One is a hip hop track and the other one is a pop rock song. Stick with me all the way to the end on this one. It's a great video. It's gonna really teach you how to dial in professional sounding vocals, even if you recorded your vocals in an untreated room. I have the plugin pulled up here and you can see it's pretty simplistic. I'm gonna run through all the different features and show you how to set this thing up so you can have your vocals sounding super, super clean and silky. All right, vocals are silky, get it? Now, when you buy this, or if you have the Waves subscription plan, the ultimate bundle or whatever they call it, you will also get access to a live version of this plugin. That one looks like this, so they call it Silk Vocal Live. The only difference between these two is that the Silk Vocal uses linear phase filtering, so it's going to be much more precise, phase accurate, whereas Silk Vocal Live uses minimum phase filters, and that is to reduce latency. Linear phase processing requires a lot of latency, can't really use that live. This one doesn't use that, so it's going to have a little bit different sound. So experiment with both because you might like the sound of the live version. So here's the overall interface, very approachable, just a few knobs. First thing you need to do is set up the voice. Okay, so the algorithms are designed differently depending if you're male or female vocalist. So choose which voice you're gonna be processing. And then we have 3 different bands that's going to attenuate any types of resonant frequencies that are in the vocal. Okay, resonant frequencies are these like boomy, kind of out of control frequencies that make your vocal sound either harsh or sound muddy. You can activate each band by clicking on the little blue button here. So that allows you to only process certain bands if you want. If you want to solo just the band, you can click on these little headphone icons in each of these different bands. So if we want to just hear the low band.
Keep calling you Crip. You just want to be a teacher.
Or the high band. Typically, this high band is useful for de-essing the vocal. So if there's any bright S sounds, you can use this to really go in and surgically remove that. You have 2 options. You can click on this bell filter or a shelf filter. If you have very narrow bands that are really annoying or piercing, you might want to try using the bell shape. If the vocal in general is tonally too bright, that's when you're going to want to choose the shelf. Over here, you have these 2 horizontal sliders. This allows you to fine tune the frequency range of this mid band. Okay, so if we get vocals back,
they're gonna want to search. They're gonna smell some weed.
We can hear the band this way by clicking on the headphone.
Keep calling you Crip. You just want to be a teacher.
And that allows you to fine tune where you're attenuating these middle frequencies, okay? So if you hear some mud that's not being taken out by this low band, then you can fine tune it here. And if you look really closely, there's this little arrow right down here. This allows you to change the frequency range that this high band is operating in. So if you're trying to de-ess something and it feels like you can't quite get those higher frequencies, just click that arrow, change it to 20K, and you'll be able to grab them. Now, if you want to hear exactly what's being removed from the vocal, you can click on this little triangle icon. This is the delta feature, so it's going to let you hear the difference between the audio before and after processing. So now we're going to be able to easily identify if we're removing the harsh stuff or not. I like to put it in this delta mode to fine tune exactly where I want to put these bands so that I only remove the harsh stuff and leave everything else. Like right there, those vocals sound pretty harsh. So I'm just going to leave it like that. Now, a shortcut you can use to solo a band is actually by right-clicking on the knobs when you're adjusting them. That allows me to solo just that band. It's a little bit faster workflow to do it that way than to try to click on these little headphone icons. On the right side, we actually have a compressor. So to enable it, you have to make sure that this button is red. It's a nice sounding compressor. Check this out.
They gonna wanna search, they gonna smell some weed, and you don't even smoke. Treat you like you GD, they keep calling you folk.
Now, something I'd recommend doing instead of approaching it that way is to actually grab onto this little up-down arrow here. And what this is going to do is compensate for the increase in volume that you get when you pull this down so that you're not fooled into over-compressing your vocals. A lot of times when you're compressing stuff and the volume increases, you think it sounds better, but it might not actually sound better. Okay, it's just a bias human beings have. So instead, you can use this to get a gain matched copy as you're increasing your compression.
They gonna pull you over, they gonna tell you freeze, they gonna wanna search, they gonna smell some weed.
So like at this point, it's really clear that you're pulling out more of that room tone that we don't necessarily want. We're starting to get maybe a little bit of distortion. So we want to back that off, and it just helps with workflow. And then down here, we just have an output knob. Now down here is a little secret window that allows you to expand to more advanced features. Right here is an integrated high-pass filter. It adds a high-pass at 60 hertz, so it's just going to clean up rumble. So I would say you can safely always have this engaged. And these are linear phase filters, so go ahead and leave that enabled. Speed, which is going to be the attack time of this processing. So how quickly do we want to attenuate those resonance frequencies? Then we have the precision knob. This basically just adjusts the width of all of the resonance suppression that is happening in this plugin. You can think of that as like a Q value if you're using an EQ. So if you have sharp, it's going to make the Q really large and make the peak narrow. If you're doing smooth, it's going to be a lot more broad. It's going to sound smoother, but it might not be as surgical. If you want just some tonal smoothing, I would suggest going on more on the smooth side. If there's just like some very particular frequencies you don't like in the vocal, you might want to make it a little bit more sharp. Something I do want to mention, try to stay away from having the speed really, really fast and the precision be really, really sharp. It tends to introduce like distortion and some weird artifacts that I don't think sound really that great ever. So use your judgment on that one. I find that the default settings are pretty good. I tend to make this a little bit more on the sharp side as it'll go in and be more surgical and pull out those really like ice pick frequencies that bother the hell out of me. Makeup gain. So this is going to compensate for any of the resonance suppression that's happening. I encourage you to leave this on. It's going to help you make a better decision when you're dialing this in. Then we have a gate here. Just all that does is allow you to get rid of any like low noise hum or hiss or anything in your audio signal. If you go too high, guess what's going to happen? You're going to start messing up the sound of your vocals. Check it out.
They gonna wanna search, they gonna smell some weed, and you don't even smoke.
But if you dial this in right, you can kind of get rid of a little bit of the room sound. And then finally, we have this mix knob that allows you to basically dial back the amount of this effect and also leave in a little of that original vocal to make it sound a little bit less processed. Let's dial this bad boy in. So let's just play this vocal track with the beat and listen to see if there's anything that jumps out in terms of the quality of the vocal. Does it sound muddy? Does it sound bright? Does it sound like it's lost in the beat?
Search, they gonna smell some weed, and you don't even smoke. Treat you like you GD, they keep.
First few things I'm noticing right away. One is this vocal is a little bit muddy. It sounds kind of chesty. And then the top end is a little bit spitty, meaning like we need to de-ess some of that. Okay, so let's start by just rolling up this low resonance suppression to see if we can clean up the vocal.
Gonna tell you freeze, they gonna wanna search, they gonna smell some weed, and you don't even smoke. Treat you like you GD, they keep calling you folk.
Way too much. It made it really crispy, but I think it sounded the best right between 30 and 50.
Folk keep calling you crip. You just wanted to be a teacher cause you loving the kids. You never hated no cop. You never call them no pig.
Let's go on to the top end. I want to de-ess the vocal a little bit.
Smell some weed and you don't even smoke. Treat you like you GD, they keep calling you folk.
Now, I want to keep the brightness. I like the air that's there. So instead of using the shelf, we're going to go choose the bell filter. That's going to be a little bit more specific and help us focus in on the frequencies that are really a problem.
Keep calling you crip. You just wanted to be a teacher because you loving the kids. You never hated no cop. You never call them no pig.
If we want to hear what it's taking out, we push the delta and then listen to the headphone. And if we dial this in perfectly, it should only be removing the really harsh stuff. We don't want to remove any extra air. I like the presence we have. Let's compress the vocal a little bit by using this compressor.
They gonna wanna search, they gonna smell some weed, and you don't even smoke. Treat you like you GD, they keep calling.
So this compressor is super smooth, so it's easy to get carried away with it. I'm listening for that room tone. The room sound is getting louder and louder, and we want it to be a little bit more professional sounding, so I don't want to put so much of the room tone in there, so let's back off this compressor.
Keep calling you folk, keep calling you crip. You just wanted to be a teacher, cause you loving the kids. You never hated no cop, you never call them no pig.
So right here, it sounds like the vocal's nice and controlled, and I can hear every single word. It's not like it's jumping in and out.
This is how they treat you. Don't you fucking move, boy, or they gonna leave you. Chewing your cerebral like you wasn't top of your class, like you.
So this is way too much, but it is cleaning up a little bit of those upper mids that I think add a lot of clarity to this vocal. So let's pull some of these mids out here.
Like you gonna tell you freeze. They gonna wanna search. They gonna smell some weed, and you don't even smoke. Treat you like you GD, they keep calling you folk, keep calling.
Now, if we want to let a little bit more aggression through, what we can do is slow this down. That's going to let those like S's and like the little bit sharper sounds kind of sneak by this plugin.
Keep calling you crip. You just wanted to be a teacher, cause you loving the kids. You never hated no cop, you never call them no pig. And this is how they treat you.
I'm going to keep it a little bit around the 20 to 25. When we're too slow, we're not attenuating all those resonant frequencies and it's starting to get muddy again. So we just need to speed it up a bit. Let's go back and forth between sharp and smooth.
They gonna pull you over. They gonna tell you freeze. They gonna wanna search. They gonna smell some weed, and you don't even smoke. Treat you like you GD, they keep calling you.
So when it sounds sharp, we're getting a little bit more clarity or presence in the voice, but that can also kind of sound like harshness. So find a nice middle ground, maybe around 30.
Calling you folk, keep calling you crip. You just wanted to be a teacher, cause you loving the kids. You never hated no cop.
Yeah, right around here.
You never call them no pig, and this is how they treat you.
Let's bypass this plugin to see what it's done to the vocal.
And you don't even smoke. Treat you like you GD, they keep calling you folk, keep calling you crip. You just wanted to be a teacher, cause you loving the kids. You never hated no cop, you never call them no pig. You move, boy, or they gonna leave you.
So to me, it's really tightening up the low end of the vocal and making it feel more present. It's much more controlled. It might be a little bit over compressed, so I probably dial this back a tiny bit, but it's sounding really good.
Chewing your cerebral like you wasn't top of your class, like you wasn't always cutting your.
Right here is a good starting point. All right, so let's hear it in the context of the mix.
They gonna tell you freeze. They gonna wanna search. They gonna smell some weed, and you don't even smoke. Treat you like you GD, they keep calling you folk, keep calling you crip. You just wanted to be a teacher, cause you loving the kids. You never hated no cop, you never call them no pig. And this is how they treat you. Don't you fucking move, boy, or they gonna leave you. Chewing your cerebral like you wasn't top of your class, like you wasn't always cutting your grandma.
It's crazy. It's without this plugin, it sounds like just some amateur vocal, and then with it on, it just sounds balanced, smooth, and just really gives it a nice polish. And it's super transparent. It's not like you are noticing a lack of high end. It's just controlling the vocal and putting it in a beautiful spot. I dig it. I really like this plugin. As a quick bonus, you might have noticed all that room sound, right?
Until you freeze, they gonna wanna search. They gonna smell some weed.
Especially when we crank this up.
You don't even smoke. Treat you like you GD, they keep calling you folk.
If you have a similar sounding vocal where you just record in an untreated room and you have that room ambience, there's another plugin you can get by Waves, which I think is one of the best out there for removing the room sound from a vocal at the cheapest price point possible. And that's their Clarity VXD Reverb plugin. Let me just show you what this does. It's absolutely incredible. So we're gonna put this plugin before Silk Vocal, and we're gonna try to pull out the room and make it sound really professional. Here we go.
Be a teacher, cause you loving the kids. You never hated no cop. You never call them no pig. And this is how they treat you. Don't you fucking move, boy, or they gonna leave you. Chewing your cerebral.
Isn't that wild? Like, it's so much drier and clearer, and all you did was turn this knob.
Like you wasn't top of your class, like you wasn't always cutting your grandma fucking grass every other week.
Put it in the mix.
Pig, and this is how they treat you. Don't you fucking move, boy, or they gonna leave you. Chewing your cerebral like you wasn't top of your class, like you wasn't always cutting your grandma fucking grass every other week. Who would've thought she would've buried you on the feet? October days, tears dropping on falling leaves.
Man, those two plugins together just work, especially if you don't have like a professional recording environment. Like it's amazing. All right, here's another track. This is a more pop rock style track.
In your face was a warmth that would melt the frost. One glance and I knew.
Okay, so if we listen to it in solo, we can kind of hear it's a little bit muddy.
This is just what I need. I had to learn from my mistakes.
There's something in like the 300 hertz range. Let me just show you. I can solo just the low band. Yeah, it's that stuff that we want to clean up.
Had to learn from my mistakes. Just on and move on. Breaking.
A little too much.
The type of person I've become.
So we're gonna want a little bit of that in there because it gives the vocal some power. So we might need to fine tune it using this mid band.
I'll help you to your feet. Dust down and smash on through. One glance and I knew.
Now let's dial the top end in because it is a little bit sibilant.
You've got to make your own mistakes, but when you fall, I'll help you to your feet.
Now it's always a good idea to be dialing in plugins while the music is playing, so it helps you focus in on getting the right sound for the track.
You've got to make your own mistakes, but when you fall, I'll help you to your feet. Dust down and smash on through. I had to learn from my mistakes. Dust down and move on. Breaking.
Cool. Let's add a little bit of compression.
I had to learn from my mistakes. Dust down and move on. Breaking.
That's all I want to put on there. We don't want to take the emotion out of that vocal. Now, I'm also noticing that adding this compression kind of brought a little bit of that top end of the vocal out. So let's maybe dial this up a little bit more.
I had to learn from my mistakes.
It's really kind of jumping out. It's kind of sizzly. And I don't think having it as a bell filter is going to work. I think we need to tonally bring the brightness down on those sharper sounds. So let's put it on the shelf and see if we can clean up and smooth out that top end.
I had to learn from my mistakes. Dust down and move on. Breaking.
Now, to me, it sounds like there's some additional frequencies that aren't really being attenuated. For us to extend the range even further, what we can do is click this little down arrow and select a higher frequency portion of the spectrum. And maybe now it'll be able to access those higher frequencies that I was hearing slip through the processing. Here we go.
I had to learn from my mistakes. Dust down and move on. Breaking.
Okay, let's make this a little bit smoother down here and see if we can catch those frequencies better.
The type of person I've become was built to keep you strong.
Okay, if we turn it up too much, what ends up happening is you hear the vocalist starts developing a lisp. Not good. So let's dial that back.
You are dauntless, out of place. Remember, move at your own steadfast pace. You're free, follow nobody. Remember, you're changing me.
Let's dial that mix knob back and then feed in some of that original vocal to make it really sound organic and natural.
You've got to make your own mistakes, but when you fall, I'll help you to your feet. Dust down and smash on through. One glance and I knew.
There we go. That's sounding awesome. Let's bypass it and see what it sounds like.
The type of person I've become was built to keep you strong.
Let's try the verse.
Life was cold and my purpose was lost. In your face was a warmth that would melt the frost. One glance and I knew.
Man, it sounds like we took like a sheet or a blanket off the vocalist, and it just brings out so much more the clarity of the vocal, like the intelligibility of the lyrics. Let's listen to it in the context of the mix.
Life was cold and my purpose was lost. Life was cold and my purpose was lost. In your face was a warmth that would melt the frost. Life was cold and my purpose was lost. In your face was a warmth that would melt the frost. Life was cold and my purpose was lost.
Just adds that layer of clarity to the vocal, makes it just so much more polished sounding to me. Now, what are your thoughts on this plugin? Is it gimmicky, or is there actually something magical here? To my ears, it's a lot more transparent than what you're gonna get if you use a multi-band compressor. It does a really good job of going into the vocal and very, very carefully removing all the muddiness and those resonant frequencies that kind of distract from the vocal performance. I can appreciate all the extra little features that they have in the plugin that allow you to adjust the broadness or the smoothness of the suppression. And on top of that, they have that compressor built in, which I think really does a nice job of smoothing out vocal performance. And if your music still doesn't sound amazing or you're still struggling with it a little bit, I have a downloadable cheat sheet with my favorite go-to settings for EQ and compression on all the elements in a rock or metal track. And to be honest, these settings also apply to hip hop and basically every other genre out there. Check out the description, go and download that free guide, print it out, put it on your desk. And so when you're working on your next track, you can just reference it and get some really good starting spots. I'm Bobby Bale, the mixing mastering engineer at Raytown Productions, and I'll see you in another video.